So the work that I do, that I've come to do, is to acknowledge the impact of the psychological and the spiritual in terms of how we live our lives. So I'm going to use you. You've been made an example of a couple of times, Lolani, in terms of your example. The psychological, from my point of view, and I'll get into it a little more, is the attitude of I don't have anything. I don't want to. Don't feel like it. The spiritual is the plane, the dynamic internally that says, now wait a minute, that's not accurate. I do, and you have your history. The work of psychological orientation, spiritual centeredness, which I'm going to talk about in the context of the couple, is understanding that we have access to these two different ways of knowing. I refer to the spiritual consciousness as the voice of the king or queen, depending upon your gender identification. So the challenge is learning to hear the voice of the king/queen. I'll refer to it as the voice of the king. It's the challenge to hear it and then honor it. The work involves paying attention to the dynamic between the two. So when you say, I only gave him the change, I forgot your name, I'm so sorry. But when you say, I only gave him the change, that was you listening to, I'm not going to answer that. It's you listening to, sorry, didn't unplug the phones. Okay. It's hearing the voice of the characters, which I'll explain to you, and saying, wait a minute, I'm going to listen to a part of my psyche, the psychological orientation of my psyche that doesn't feel like I have enough. And then there's the awareness of, wait a minute, I'm witnessing the voice of the king as an example. It's the dynamic between the two dimensions of experience, between the spiritual, which is the voice of the king or queen, and the psychological, which is voice that comes from formation of personality, which I'll get into. So the challenge in couples work is for that construct to be embodied by both partners. I make the metaphor of the king by telling the story of King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table. And in that story, as the story goes, the old king calls his friend Merlin the magician, and he says, Merlin, I want you to take care of my young son or daughter, because gender has nothing to do with this. I want you to take care of my little baby, because people are going to go and try to attack him or her, because they want the power of the throne. So I want you to take care of him and make sure that he's going to be okay. So Merlin takes the little baby boy, brings him to Uncle Charlie up in the boondocks, has him raised, and then he comes to town and he puts the sword in the stone in the center of London and says to everybody, whoever pulls the sword out of the stone is the natural born leader of England. And decades go by. Everybody tries, big people, small people, happy people, smart people, loving people, stingy people, all kinds of people try to pull the sword out of the stone. Nobody can do it. Then Arthur comes to town. He's a young man now. Walks over, says, what the hell, I'll try it. Pulls the sword out of the stone. People bow down. It's been decades now. People bow down and they say, oh, we have the king. Arthur sits on the throne, makes the decisions for the kingdom, and the kingdom is called Camelot, the perfect culture, for 100 years. That's the story. The king is the voice of spirit, of consciousness in that story. The kingdom is your kingdom. Your kingdom could be you alone. It could be you in relationship, you, your family, you, your culture, you, your planet. It's as expansive or contracted, big or small, as it is for you. The challenge is to be able to hear the voice of the king and put the king on the throne, because the king has the needs of the kingdom internalized. Just the king or queen knows the needs of the kingdom in the way that a mother knows the needs of her child. It's just an inner knowing. So what I propose to people I work with, and I work as a therapist with individuals and couples, is the guidance that I suggest, the way to live one's most fulfilling life, is to serve the voice of the king or queen. Because the king or queen knows things that we don't know, we know. Now, the flip side of that is, if you're not hearing the voice of the king or queen, then who's talking to you? And I tell the story a little bit further and talk about the Knights of the Round Table. So here you have a table, metaphorically speaking, where you have all these characters that are not the king. And each one of these characters has their own agenda. The character does not have the needs of the kingdom in mind. When the character sits in the seat of power, the kingdom goes out of balance. The character, the most obvious example would be an addictive pattern. When an addictive pattern takes over and sits in the throne where the decisions are made, the kingdom goes out of whack, because the character is totally consumed with satisfying him or herself to serve their addiction, whether it's a substance, whether it's work, whether it's sex, whether it's love, it doesn't matter. The kingdom goes out of balance. So the challenge from a psychological point of view is to begin to identify the voice of a character. It's difficult and challenging oftentimes to hear the voice of the king or queen. In the examples that several people brought up, it was clear what the voice of the king was. It was clear that when the woman gave the homeless guy the coins, she said, wait a minute, that's not right. That was a clear indication. So she went back. Now he wasn't there for whatever reason it was. That framework is the dynamic between the psychological and the spiritual. And that's where the work begins. Now, to take that a little bit further, to understand the formation in the work that I do of these characters, the way I understand the psyche is that by the time we're 5 years old, the first 5 years of life are experienced infancy, early childhood. We've all been a screaming baby. We've all had that sense of being out of control. We've all had the experience of being left and abandoned and anxious and so on. And we had all these powerful emotions, you and everybody else you know. By the time we're 5 years old, we've created what I refer to as a suit of armor. It's a suit of armor that has several functions. It protects us from the vulnerability of what we experienced in family of origin, which, by the way, I refer to as the loony bin. Everybody is raised in a loony bin of some kind or another. And we deal with it. So by the time we're 5, sometimes earlier, maybe a little later, we develop a way of dealing with all of these powerful emotions. And this suit of armor becomes our identity. We think we are the suit of armor. I call it, the aspects that come out, I call the protector saboteur, because in the early stages, it protects us. So it could be anything. It could be if you're raised in a family with an alcoholic parent, you could become adult child of an alcoholic and be constantly oriented toward making sure nobody has any problems. Or if there's a single parent in the household, you're much more vulnerable. You want to make sure everything is okay, everything is perfect. Because if it's not, then you get to be vulnerable. It could be that you will be really smart. The way you will deal with your sense of not feeling safe in the loony bin, in the family of origin, is you're going to be really smart, or you're going to be a really good athlete, or you're going to be really pretty, or you're going to be really hostile. You're going to be really angry. We all figure this out for ourselves. Any pattern of behavior that you can think of describes some people. So in the work that I do, part of the challenge, since it's so challenging to hear the voice of the king or queen, is to identify what's not the voice of the king or queen. So in the work that I offer, we identify the character, typically name it. We call it stingy. Sally the stingy one, or whatever. And we begin to realize that when stingy, when I'm feeling like I don't have enough, when I'm feeling that I can't or I don't want to, that's a character. It's not my identity. That's the key to this transition. To make a clear statement that identity is rooted in spirit. Identity is rooted in the voice of the king or queen. When we have the voice of the character, which I'll get into, then there is a methodology that I offer to help you shift gears from the place of realizing, oh, that's the character that you've named, and realign with the voice of the king. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to teach you a basic set of exercises. I call it mindful breathing and mindful listening. Someone also said, I'm sorry I don't remember your names, but if I could only meditate for a minute or a second. This is a form of practical meditation to help you identify the part of you that is accessing the king or queen. So I'm going to do it right now. I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to ask you to close your eyes if you're comfortable. If not, keep your eyes open. And I'm going to ask you to put your hands on your abdomen so that your thumbs are resting on your navel, on your belly button. And then I'm going to ask you to breathe into the palms of your hands, from your fingers to your thumbs. Briefly pause and exhale. And inhale. And feel the breath pressing against your abdomen. And then exhale. Now keep doing the breathing for a minute while I say to you what this comes from. The abdomen is the source of power and chi energy, and it's talked about as a part of the body in many traditions, especially the martial arts, which I've studied as a dilettante for many years. So what we're doing is we're shifting the consciousness into the belly, which has several results. One, it's going to lower your arousal level. It can help you learn, as you learn how to do this, it will help you get less activated, less emotion. It's also stimulating that awareness of your body center, your body core. So now what I'd like you to do is, I'd like you to use your stomach muscles to press out against the palms of your hands as you inhale. So inhale, press out, feel the difference. Feel what it's like to press out against the palm of your hands. Do that once or twice. And then I'd like you to go back to breathing into the palms of your hands without using your stomach muscles. This is what the practice will be. So you're going to breathe, use your awareness to shift your attention, breathe into the palms of your hands. Now what I want you to imagine is that really what you're doing is you're breathing into a balloon in the center of your abdomen. A balloon expands in all directions at the same time. So in the same way that your breath is expanding your abdomen forward into the palms of your hands, see if you can get in touch with the breathing pressing backwards below your kidneys, like you're filling a balloon. So you're going to breathe into the palms of your hands and into your back. Now the idea here is to practice. This is learning a new body habit. By the way, this is the first breathing pattern. If you're fortunate enough to be around an infant, watch the infant's breath. The infant's breath will expand and contract their abdomen. So we are going back to a very early time in our development. The way we use it brings up another story I love to tell, which is the story of Odysseus going past the island of the Sirens. And in that story, Odysseus, the great king and warrior, goes by the island of the Sirens, who make this incredible music. They're harpies, they're monsters, but they make what's referred to as the music of the spheres, incredibly angelic music. And what happens is the mariners in their boats hear the music and they say, hey, what's that? Maybe there's women on that island. Let's go, let's check it out. They go to the island, they crack up on the rocks, and the Sirens attack them and pick their bones clean, it says in the original Odyssey. Nasty business. Odysseus knows about the challenge of getting past the harpies. So he has his oarsmen put earplugs in, actually put wax in their ears. They don't hear a thing. They don't have any idea what's going on. He has himself tied to the mast of his ship. Because he can't change the direction of the boat goes past the island. He hears the music, but doesn't crack up on the rocks. That's the story. And it said, those that get past the harpies on the island, the Sirens, get great wisdom. As a metaphor, the mast is the self. Mast is the queen. Breath can be used to tie yourself to the mast. The sound of the Sirens are the thoughts, feelings, and body sensations that cause us to act or speak things that cause us regret. These are the source of the characters. So now when you're involved in doing this work, once you identify a character as a character, because until we identify a character as a character, we think it's us. Until you identify the voice that says, I don't have enough, I can't give this young person a $5 bill. As soon as you identify, until you identify the voice of the character as a character, you think it's true, I can't, and you ignore him, or you don't want to give him anything. So the challenge is learning to identify the voices of the characters and use the awareness of the character to tie yourself to the mast. When you tie yourself to the mast, in other words, you're using your breath. You catch, oh, there I am. I just did it again. I hear that voice in me that says, I don't have enough. I hear that voice. That's a character that you've named. As soon as you're aware of the presence of the character, now you've learned to use the breathing to tie yourself to the mast. Now you've learned, and this is so much of what you all have been talking about, you have woken up to the fact that that's a character. That's not me anymore. That's not me. Was it me? Yeah. Did I think that was really who I was? Yeah. It's not me anymore. When we go out of alignment with the king or queen, it doesn't feel good. We don't like it. So it creates internal disharmony. So the idea of a psychologically oriented, which is understanding the formation of the characters, which before you're 5 years old, the formation of the knight in armor, the armor that we use to protect ourselves, and camouflage more vulnerable emotions. And the possibility of being aware when you're doing it by using the breath to align yourself with the voice of consciousness, of spirit, is at the foundation of the work that I do. To shift gears now, the evolving couple, I'm getting ahead of myself. The evolving couple is a couple where both folks are working with this level of awareness. So I'm going to back it up a little bit. The paradigm shift that I believe that I'm presenting to you is based on the understanding that I have that the couple exists as an energy. It exists as an energetic field. I think of it as an infinity sign. I also believe there's something called Carillion photography by a husband and wife in Russia, where they take photos of inanimate objects like a leaf or even different metals, and they see auras. They can actually photograph the aura. If you take a picture, a Carillion photograph of a leaf in the spring, it's radiant rainbow. You take a picture of the same leaf off of a tree in the summer, it's much less radiant, and in the winter, there's no life at all. I believe that if we had the right photographic equipment, we could take a picture of the couple, this energetic field that exists between two people. The couple has stages of development in the same way that we as individuals have stages of development. The obvious stages are infant, child, adolescent, adult. These are obvious stages of development. I believe there are more advanced stages of development, without getting too far into that, which involves a sense of being able to access what's referred to as witness consciousness. So at a more advanced stage of development, someone has become aware that they can look at their own behavior, take responsibility for their own reactivity, and address it accordingly. I believe it's a different developmental stage, as profound as the stage of becoming an adult to a teenager. Going back to the Rajneesh or Osho quote, to say that to someone who has not recognized their ability to witness their own ability to see a character, they will reject this theory as being hierarchical or being ridiculous or something like that. But I know I'm speaking to the choir here. So this is the work of working at a more advanced stage of development with the individual functioning with witness consciousness, the ability to look at oneself, to look at one's own reactivity, and to take responsibility for that. The couple, like the individual, has stages of development. On a simplistic level, rapidly, there's formation. I say that couples are like omelets. You don't have an omelet by cracking some eggs and putting it in a pan. It takes heat over time until the eggs coagulate and form an omelet. You can say it's an omelet before the eggs have coagulated, but what you have is mushy eggs. Same thing for a couple. You can have two people getting together, getting to know each other, making love with each other, hanging out with each other. But until the energy coagulates and forms this energetic field, it's not a couple. And I guesstimate it takes about 6 months for a couple to form. So many times I've heard people talk about they have found a relationship. I found the greatest gal. I found the greatest guy. How long have you known him? 2 weeks, 6 weeks, 8 weeks. And I tell them the omelet story. And I tell them, you know what? This stage is formation. It's a stage of formation of a couple. It takes heat over time. Once the couple is formed, now there's a stability. You can make plans with each other. There's a sense of recognition. There's more vulnerability. The couple goes into another stage, which I refer to, for lack of a better word, as gestation. Following through on the couples are like eggs metaphor, think of it as two chicks inside the same egg. Now, there's an eggshell, and the two chicks grow up with each other as a result of love and communication and experience. They get bigger and they get more intimate, and then they are about to reach the stage where the eggshell cracks. This is the crisis stage of relationship. The crisis stage is hit when one or both people will say to themselves and to each other, I'm done with this. I can't do this anymore. This relationship is killing me. It's suffocating me. There's no room for me. I gotta get out. The eggshell cracks. The eggshell, when you think about it, are the agreements you've made with yourself and with the other about how you're supposed to be in that relationship. I'm supposed to be nice and kind. I'm not supposed to have any anger. I'm supposed to be generous, or I'm not supposed to be generous. I can't trust this. I can't trust that. There are all these ideas that we have, that conscious and unconscious, about how to be the best we can be in relationship. As a result of growth and development, the couple reaches the next stage of development, which is crisis. And they hit what I refer to as the wall. The wall is that place that I've described, where one or both people say, I can't do this anymore. I'm done. And this is where 50%, more or less, of married folks head for divorce. They say, we can't do it, it's over. What I say is, that's not necessarily so. It might be so. It's not necessarily so. Because what it means is, you've come to a really difficult obstacle on the obstacle course. It's called failure. Developmentally and emotionally, you are in, this is no bullshit. You're in a place, you can't stand it anymore. It's killing you. It's terrible. You go to a therapist. Go to a priest. You want to figure out, you can't get past the wall. So 50% of the people, statistically, will get divorced. The resolution takes you to the next stage of development of the couple beyond failure, which is the evolving couple. The key to the evolving couple and what allows the evolving couple to get past the wall is both people are ready to say, what am I doing that contributes to this pattern? Typically, you know that the only way things can change is if he changes or she changes. And that's fixed in your head. She's such a this, he's such a that. That creates the negativity, the distance, the anger, the disappointment, the frustration, all that stuff gets created. And that's what contributes to what I see as a developmental crisis. It's not a problem any more than adolescence is a problem. It's painful. I'm sure we've all been there to some degree or another. So the work of the evolving couple involves both people being willing to look at the formation of characters, which are at the foundation of personality, in order to honor the voice of the relationship itself, this energetic field. This is really, really hard work to be done. Part of what I say to represent this is, not every acorn becomes an oak tree. Not every tadpole becomes a frog. Not every relationship becomes a couple. And not every couple becomes an evolving couple. It requires, as far as I can tell, it requires the willingness to be open to looking internally at what one does. You could be crystal clear that it's the other person's fault. And my response to that when I'm working with somebody is, you know what? Let's say it's 99% your partner's fault. What's your 1% role? Because that opens up the crack in the door. What is it that you're doing? Only 1%. 99 it's obviously her responsibility. It's obviously his fault. Because without that sense of awareness, because what happens when you move into that realm, again, it's a developmental shift, like water to steam. It's a developmental shift. When you do that, you're accessing what I would refer to as witness consciousness. Witness consciousness is the consciousness that we have when we're, say, the next time, say, Lalani, somebody asks for a cup of coffee or a glass of soda pop, and your automatic reaction is, I don't have anything. Sorry about that. To be able to be aware that that's my character, which you would identify, means that you can use your breathing when you identify the character, Mr. Stingy. Are you open to identifying that character, Lolani? Give it a name, a caricature, like a cartoon character or a character in a movie or a book. Give it a name, the one that says, I don't have enough, I don't have anything. Can you name it? I'll pick one.
Unmute yourself, Lonnie. You want to speak?
Yes.
Give it a name.
Mine.
Mine. Cool. So we all have these things. So now the next time, because you will experience it again, it's hardwired. These are patterns that go back to the loony bin, to family of origin. The next time you hear the voice, how do you know when mine, the character, is about to take over the throne room? What are the thoughts, feelings, and body sensations? My bad. What are the thoughts, feelings, and body sensations that you have that you could say, oh, that's the voice of mine? Can you identify one?
Yes, I get very, I feel like I get small. I get very small.
What part of your body would come to your attention most?
Right along my face. Like I feel like everything gets very narrow. Like I get very focused.
Good. Come up with one other feeling or thought that associates with mind character. There's that contraction in your face. What else? A thought. The words that you hear in your head.
No. I heard no. No.
So now, if we're working together now, would be the work. When you hear the word no, when you feel that shrinking feeling in your face, the application is you say to yourself, mine, internally, silently, or sometimes I say it softly under your breath to get your attention. As soon as you're aware that it's a character, which is created, this knight in shining armor that protects you, now you say, wait a minute, that's a character, where's the voice of the king? You use the breathing, which you've been practicing, in order to break your identification with the character and ask yourself for a moment to sit in that place of awareness that we create when we practice the breathing, which is in the realm of the king. That's what the work is about, giving an explanation for psychologically oriented and spiritually centered. I want to give you a second exercise. In addition to the thank you, I hope it was not too uncomfortable when I picked on you.
No, not at all. Thank you very much.
Yeah. So we all have these characters. They run the show. Until we identify a character, until you knew mine was a character, you were mine. That was it. No, sorry, blow the guy off. This is a way of connecting to the body and using the breath to lower your arousal level. So there's a program I have called Taming Your Anxiety. I also have another one called Taming Your Anger. They both involve the same basic application. But what I'm going to give you is an exercise I refer to as mindful listening. And we'll combine the two. So mindful listening is, close your eyes again, if you're comfortable. I want you to imagine yourself in the center of a circle of sound. Imagine yourself in the center of a circle of sound. You're always in the center of a circle of sound, even if you're in a closet. Listen for the farthest sound. Listen for the silence in between the sounds. Now, while you're doing that, this is like walking and chewing gum. Pay attention to the breath. Tie yourself to the mast. Shift your attention into the belly breathing. Listen for the sound and the silence. And go into that meditative state. In the beginning, I say do it for 1 minute. It refers back to the woman who said, I wish I could meditate for a minute or a second. So you're going to listen to the sound. Now, the added piece is whenever your mind gets caught in a thought and you're aware that your mind is caught in a thought, go back to listening and observing your breath. I'm going to let you do it for 1 minute. When you realize your mind is caught in a thought, go back to listening and observing the breath. This is the training, they call it monkey mind. This is the training of your mind and learning how to differentiate between the voices of the characters so that you can listen to the voice of the king or queen. In order to hear the voice of the king or queen, we had to get rid of the noise of the telephone in order to hear the voice here. When there's all this noise going on internally, we don't get to hear the voice of the king or queen. So this is the practical application of meditation from a psychological point of view. It isn't about sitting in meditation. Many schools have thought, I've practiced different forms of meditation for a long time. This is not sitting for 20 minutes in a meditation. I'm sure if we took a survey, there's 25 different methods of meditation in this group alone. This is simply using a practical exercise to lower your arousal level, your anxiety or your anxiety or your anger or your hard feeling from pain, of abandonment, or all this other stuff, and separating from the thoughts in your mind. It takes practice. It takes practice. And what you're doing is you're developing a new habit. The habit is to break your identification and learn how to lower your arousal level. So when you're ready, you can open your eyes. So this is the tool that I suggest and I teach. I start by suggesting people do it for 1 minute a day. 1 minute a day. That's the beginning. 2, 3, 4 weeks later, you're doing it for 1 breath or 3 breaths, 20 times a day. You're developing a new habit pattern. The other part of the exercise is, I'll ask you, are you ready to do this exercise? Are you ready to commit for 1 minute a day? And you'll say, yeah, sure, I don't have any reason not to. Then what I say is, okay, you have no reason not to. When you don't, identify the thought, feeling, or body sensation that's stopping you. Oh, I forgot. Oh, I didn't feel like it. I didn't have time. Fuck it, it's stupid. Whatever. These are the voices of the characters. Because once you've committed to 1 minute a day, it's the king or queen that's committing to a practice to identify that center core for yourself, because you're on a path. You're on a path. You want to access, you don't use the language. I said, in the beginning, you all are familiar with this stuff. I'm just going to reframe. I'm going to give you a different language for what you are all talking about. You're all talking about the psychological orientation and spiritual centeredness from a different language point of view. When you're not doing it for 1 minute a day, you're under the domination of a character. And so in the work of the quote unquote therapy, it's beginning to identify the hidden voices of the characters that keep you from honoring the voice of the queen or king, which is what you know is in your best interest. What we're saying is learning to listen to the voice of your higher power. So I'm going to check my list, see what else I have in here. So I think I pretty much touched the stages of development of the couple, the crisis point, the challenge, the learning of tools that the couple learns. For instance, if somebody gets annoyed, in addition to recognizing the character, your own internal character, let's say mine is a character, and we all have a whole cast of characters. There's a bunch of actors in the group. There's a cast of characters internally that we carry around since the loony bin. Well, if that's not complicated enough, try the patterns that are created between two people who have chosen to be with each other. Now we've got complexity. So we begin to identify, whoops, I got a cat that just walked in my house that isn't mine. 1 second. Sorry about that. So now we will identify patterns in the relationship. It's the, I feel attacked, so I withdraw on the one hand. And when he withdraws, I feel abandoned. And then I feel abandoned and I'll attack, or something like that. There are numerous dozens of patterns that we could be creating. We identify the pattern. Let's call it the he said, she said pattern. As soon as the couple recognize, either one in the relationship recognizes, oh, that's the he said, she said pattern, because I get that tightness in my chest, or that feeling in my stomach, or I get that thought in my head. That's the pattern. As soon as we identify the pattern, one or both of us announces it from the point of view of, we're in the he said, she said pattern. It's not, there you go, you're doing it again, you see? It's not that. Because the obvious consequences are when your he said, she said is accusatory, the one who's being accused is going to feel badly. Now, he or she is going to have to defend themselves. If they're not ready to defend themselves, they'll shut down and withdraw. There's all kinds of internal consequences, which is another discussion. But when the couple can recognize we are in a pattern, let's use the breathing, take a break, and come back and talk about what we experienced. What was the emotional source of those feelings that caused me to say that or to do that other thing. Now, the couple is now on a different plateau. You're coming from a place, a foundation of witnessing. You're coming back to each other from a place that understands, I am vulnerable, you are vulnerable. Let's share that part of ourselves that can look at our own vulnerability and share that with each other. To me, it's transformational work, and it's a new paradigm, because the paradigm shift is in the couple shifting to witness consciousness together and taking personal responsibility, using a common language, not to diminish the value of language. When you have a language to describe these internal experiences, it means you can actually talk about things. Just the idea of understanding what the king or queen is, understanding what the characters are, understanding, I didn't get into this, primary emotions and secondary emotion of anger and stuff like that. When you have a language, it now opens up the possibility of communication. When we're not reacting and bouncing off each other as the characters, it produces communication, intimacy, connection, and generates more love. And according to every psychological depth theory that I know of, this is where the healing happens. This is the healing of going back to the loony bin, going back to the source of these patterns, and it goes deep. The last thing I want to mention is I call these the protector saboteur. I call the characters protector saboteur. It's a protector because in the beginning of our lives, we have to learn how to protect ourselves against these powerful emotions. It's too much. Dad was a screamer. Maybe somebody got hit. Mom was depressed. Dad was anxious. I was abandoned. I was this, I was that. These are powerful emotions. Try being around an infant or a 1-year-old who's really upset. It's hard to be around them because we resonate with these things. So the formation of the character pattern is a protection of the psyche that I believe is necessary for all human development. I believe that if we don't develop the protector, we end up somewhere on the autism scale. Because the autism scale is a place where there's so much experience, there's so much sensitivity, so much going on that the child can't tolerate it and shuts down. So this is a requirement that we learn how to deal. It's not, some people call it the ego or the false self. I don't have those words because there's a negative, there's a pejorative connotation. I see the development of the character as a necessary stage for individuation and development at that stage. Everybody goes through it. What everybody does not go through is looking at the same character as a saboteur, especially in relationship. It will sabotage the relationship because the same tendency that protected us now undermines us and causes regret and harm. So the challenge, whereas everybody has to go through the early stage, not everybody goes through the latter stages of taking responsibility for disarming the protector. Because when we disarm the protector, we stop protecting ourselves from those feelings. Now we have to learn how to feel the feelings and deal with them as an adult. We can't continue to deal with them the way we figured out before we were 5 years old. So in the spirit of my staying on time, 8:50, I wanted to add that as a teacher, I'm ready to teach this methodology to folks. I'd love to find some trained therapists, licensed therapists. I don't want to give hours to people. I don't want that as an intervening thing. I want people who know how they approach the psyche and they work with people. If you know somebody, if you're interested, I have a new website called evolvingcouple.com. It's the name of a book that I've been writing for the last couple of years, and hopefully within the next year it'll get out there, where I talk about all this stuff. And I will be doing a group for couples, and I see people individually. So feel free to contact me. Is there time for questions now? Can you guys ask questions?
Let me just say one word here, if that's okay, Steve.
Sure.
Just that if you send me that information, I'll email it out to everybody so that they're more easily able to contact you.
Great, I will do that. Does anybody have any questions or comments or anything? Yes, Lalani.
I just want to say that that was the most amazing experience, because from the time when you started, when I heard, when you mentioned, I said, I have no more. I went back to 4 years old or 5 years old when I was spanked horribly by
Bingo.
my mom. And she said, we don't have any money. We don't have anything. Don't ask for anything. And I remember that so clearly. And I'm so happy I'm in a space now to develop an arm in that, because it stopped so many relationships, so
Yeah.
many things. And so I'm happy I had that relationship yesterday with that man,
Yeah.
because it was a relationship. So thank you for that. And it was
Yeah.
so clear. You said it and I heard it immediately.
Well, you're taking the work to the next level, because now it's knowing that those feelings are sense memories held in the body, in the emotional body. And it's being present with them by doing exactly what you're doing, by talking about it, maybe by going into a fetal position and feeling it, by connecting to those emotions as an adult, not using the protection that we used. No, I don't have it as a child, because that's the perpetuation of the character. But given the depth that you experienced, you know what I mean by this is hard work. This is
Yes.
hard to go back and to be that vulnerable and to feel it. And there's many techniques to be used to work with this level of emotion. The key in the work that I do is to facilitate transformation. And it has to do with the integration of the psychological and the spiritual. And I believe that that is fairly unique, and that the concept of the couple existing as an energetic field that exists with its own development, I believe that that is a paradigm shift, that people don't see relationships and couples